On the topic of Vision Zero, I want to acknowledge that last Friday here in San Francisco was a tragic day on our streets, and that it capped a week that saw 5 serious collisions, which as of today left 2 people dead and at least 3 more seriously injured. So just to walk through those, on last Wednesday, February 26th, a westbound driver fatally struck Zhao Gan, a 64-year-old woman who lived in the Richmond district, as she was walking across California Street at 18th Avenue. This is currently being investigated as a hit and run, and the Muni Video Unit is providing some additional support to the PD as they search for the driver. Last Friday, the first of 4, starting at 1:50 a.m., a driver drove the wrong way down a one-way street on Leavenworth at McAllister. The driver struck a tree and remains in critical condition. Then a little bit after noon, a 38-year-old man walked out of the Laguna Honda Hospital driveway onto Woodside Avenue. He was hit by a driver and remains on life support. That evening, a driver on Mansell Street in the western half of McLaren Park crossed over the dividing line and struck a car heading in the opposite direction. It was a head-on collision. The crash killed one of the drivers, 44-year-old Gerald Gracebach, who we understand was a teacher at San Francisco State. And then at 7 p.m., a person walking in the crosswalk on Divisadero Street was hit by a driver driving on Jackson Street and was seriously injured. Now, this is just kind of preliminary information publicly available that we know. Obviously, the police investigations are underway. We may learn more, but in the meantime, as part of our engineering rapid response protocol, our Sustainable Streets Division engineers have gone to all of these locations, and immediately there are some things we're doing, such as updating the signage at California, Leavenworth, and the Mansell locations, as well as daylighting on the corner of Diviz and Jackson. And as we learn more about the details of the crashes, we will add other safety improvements as they become evident. Also, yesterday morning, a Muni vehicle struck a 96-year-old man walking near West Portal. Thankfully, as we understand, he is not seriously injured, but still, obviously, a bus striking a 96-year-old man is cause for concern. So we've placed the operator on non-driving status while we try to determine what happened there. So very, very bad few days. And just as a reminder, I don't think you members of the board need this, but just to reemphasize for the public that Vision Zero is premised on the idea that even one traffic fatality on our streets is unacceptable. We believe that every one of these is preventable, and we don't consider these crashes to be accidents. Since Vision Zero was launched in 2014, we've implemented more than 230 miles of safety improvements, initiated more than a dozen public awareness campaigns, and the police department has issued nearly 175,000 citations focused on the most dangerous driving violations. Part of that data that we heard, that we were acknowledging, is data that helps us understand what types of driving behaviors are most likely to result in serious and fatal collisions, and that's where the police department has been focusing their enforcement efforts. So clearly there's been a lot done, but events like last week remind us that that's also clearly not enough. Last Thursday, as I had indicated to you before we would, the city released its Vision Zero Action Strategy, which is a document that includes commitments from 14 different city agencies, charts a path to zero deaths by transforming our streets, reducing dangerous driving, and connecting the response to traffic deaths to our city's goals around equity, climate change, and affordability. The third edition of the Vision Zero Active Action Strategy also reaffirms the city's long-term commitment to Vision Zero, and for the first time expands beyond standard engineering enforcement and education actions by providing broader policies and goals needed to achieve Vision Zero. And this is some of what we shared with you and got your comment and support on at the board workshop back in January. So we do want to ensure that tragedies like this don't go unnoticed or unmentioned or unresponded to, and they do demand that we all recommit ourselves as a city, not just us as the agency, but all of us in the city to recommit ourselves to getting to zero, and in particular asking the public to join us in making sure our streets are safe for all who use them. So more work to be done. On a lightly related note, wanted to give you a, given that speed is I think the leading primary collision factor in serious and fatal collisions, a update on speed bumps, which you might have seen an increase of in the city, which there are various versions of: speed humps, speed cushions, speed tables, raised crosswalks. Recently, we approved a large number of them, including nearly 50 in District 11 alone, as part of a traffic calming initiative that we've been undertaking with Supervisor Safai. In the last fiscal year, we installed 86 devices at 57 locations citywide. In the first 8 months of this fiscal year, we've installed 54 devices in 40 locations. And between now and the end of next fiscal year, anticipate another 207 devices at 136 locations. It's a lot of numbers, but it's all to say that there's a lot that we're doing in conjunction with and generally in response to requests from our neighbors and communities to slow down traffic on their streets. Meanwhile, additional applications for traffic calming are increasing, which is a good sign, which we know clearly represents an appetite on the behalf of the people of the city to make their streets safer and get people to slow down. So encouraging sign and sign there. The chair did mention Muni subway performance, and while we'll have a more formal update at the next meeting, as we will each month, I did want to acknowledge that after going almost 2 weeks without any major service delay up until last Thursday, we did have a number of issues, and as we note here, and it's great that we had 2 weeks, but in transit, folks know that you're only as good as your last commute, which right up to this morning, we've had a few that weren't so great. So just to give you and to share with the public a few that we had last Thursday morning, from the start of service until about mid-morning, we experienced 2 different automatic train control failures, which created the main gist of which was that they meant that all the trains had to go through the subway operating in manual mode, which means they were all going very slow, which means the throughput of the subway system was very slow. And in order to keep the trains from backing up, we turned some trains at the portals, forcing people to have to transfer onto the trains that were running. We were able to troubleshoot the issue, a very kind of bizarre and unusual issue, something that we had not seen in kind of two decades of experience with the train control system, but nonetheless took some corrective actions to get the system back into order, but also to work with our controllers to try to prevent recurrence. And at the chair's good suggestion, we did put out a note to riders later that day acknowledging what happened, letting them know that we're doing our best to reduce the incidence of such issues, and really just trying to be as transparent as possible about them. The following day, around 3 p.m., we had a 20-minute delay at Embarcadero Station when an operator had inadvertently caused a train to freeze up while trying to regain automated train control. There are times where we lose the connectivity between the train and the computer, and there are various places in the subway where we can reacquire that communication. In this case, our attempt to do so resulted in a 20-minute delay. And then on Saturday, we had a signal violation which locked up the switch at West Portal, which is a kind of a safety precaution, but it caused a 40-minute service impact. We have been working a lot, not just with the operator that was involved in that, but with all operators on rail signal compliance. It's something we've been working on for quite a number of months, including with our partners at the labor union. And then finally, this morning, we had a few miscellaneous delays, nothing major, but caused slow service coming inbound for a little bit during rush hour. So still work ahead. We will have our acting transit director come back in 2 weeks with a more formal report, but did want to acknowledge that the challenges remain, and we're doing our best to both address the challenges and to communicate well to riders and be as transparent as possible. A couple other quick things. The 16th Street Improvement Project, which you approved last year, and is designed to improve transit reliability and travel time while addressing safety and accessibility for all road users of the corridor, is about to get underway. This is a project that includes transit-only lanes, transit bulbs, new traffic and pedestrian signals, as well as streetscape amenities. And you'll recall from way back in the TEP days that ultimately this will be how the 22 Fillmore will get to Mission Bay, and the part of the 22 that goes up into Potrero Hill will be substituted by another line. So the 22 will become a strong route, a strong crosstown route connecting from Mission Bay into the Mission, and then up through the Fillmore to the marina. So phase one of the project is the eastern end of the project, which is from Potrero East all the way to 3rd, and that is the phase that work is starting on now. They'll be working from west to east in order to accommodate other construction work, and this phase is expected to be complete in a little over a year, in the spring of 2020. Work on phase 2 we expect to be advertising soon and have that go into construction this fall. We are, in order to leverage the funds that we have for construction in the city and minimize construction impacts, we are also partnering with the PUC to replace some old underground water and sewer lines, and after all of this is done, the street will be entirely repaved. So all the infrastructure below the ground will be taken care of, and we'll have a safer, better functioning, more transit priority street when the work is done. Haven't give you an update about parking garages in a while, but wanted to let you know that our Parks upgrade project, and PARK stands for Parking Access and Revenue Control System Equipment, is now complete at 9 garages with 3 more under construction. So we're about at the halfway mark. And notably, though this wasn't an initial goal of Parks, in the garages where we've already completed Parks upgrades, we've seen a 72% reduction in break-ins over the past year. And that is because, in addition to the enhanced revenue control equipment, the garages have improved lighting and signage and additional payment options that offer the higher level of security for credit card transactions. But there's cameras, there's intercoms, along with the lighting. We think the whole package of improvements is contributing to the reduction in break-ins, which is great. What was the original intent was that, and what we're seeing at the garages where these have been done, is that the operations at these garages is much more efficient, allowing vehicles to exit because there's not a queue for folks waiting to pay for a cashier. Efficiencies are also reducing overhead expenses at certain locations that were in the past very manually intensive to operate. We're also getting much better and much more real-time data